Why do you keep repeating what you know is pulling you downward, as though no other choice exists? You have already seen the consequences. You know you will lose focus, lose self-control, and lose yet another piece of faith in yourself. Yet when the moment comes, a familiar pull returns, stronger than reason and faster than every promise you have made. Then you blame yourself, try to tighten your grip, and eventually find yourself back in the same old cycle. Carl Jung suggested that at that point, the problem is no longer whether you know what is right. The problem is that the part making the decision is not always the conscious part of you. A hidden desire, an unnamed complex, or a rejected part of the shadow may be quietly shaping your choices, even while you believe you are acting freely. So how do you reclaim your agency without turning life into a war against yourself? The 6 habits in this journey will help you recognize what is strengthening your instinctive impulses and what can make your inner life more grounded. Step into this journey, because when you begin to see the true source of the cycle, you do more than change a few habits. You begin to change the person who is choosing the life you live. Habit 1. Create daily silence to remove the social mask. The first habit is not to force yourself to become stronger, but to create a space of genuine stillness where the social mask no longer has the chance to speak on your behalf. Most of us do not realize we are performing because we have worn the role for so long, and because it once helped us survive very specific circumstances. You learn to appear fine so your family would worry less, to be agreeable so your colleagues would not exclude you, to take on the difficult parts because you feared being seen as selfish, until gradually you could no longer tell which choices were sincere and which were merely reflexes shaped by the need for acceptance. Have you ever heard yourself say, "It's fine," when something inside you had been objecting for a long time? The answer is often not that you are being dishonest, but that you have adapted so skillfully that even you have come to believe in the image you present to the world. Jung called this adaptive part the persona, the mask necessary for entering social life without exposing the entirety of one's inner world to everyone. He once wrote, "The persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself as well as others think one is." The persona is not inherently harmful. It is like a uniform that helps you understand how to behave in different situations. The trouble begins when you continue wearing it even after you have come home, when no one is watching, and you still strain to be the understanding one, the strong one, the useful one, the person who never inconveniences anyone. At that point, the mask no longer serves you. It becomes a shell so thick that your real emotions must find another way out, often through irritability, excessive drinking, unconscious eating, working to the point of exhaustion, or clinging to your phone so you do not have to hear what is rising within you. I once heard about Nathan Cole, an elevator maintenance technician living in Manchester, who was known on his shift for being easygoing, rarely complaining, and almost never refusing anyone. He took on extra work, changed schedules for colleagues, and handled the difficult tasks without causing trouble. Yet every evening he drank late into the night and then lashed out at his wife over a cup left in the wrong place or an entirely ordinary question. From the outside, people might have assumed Nathan had an anger problem, while Nathan himself once believed that his family was the source of his frustration, until he tried sitting in his car for 20 minutes before going home without turning on the radio, checking his phone, or preparing a positive thought to calm himself down. In that brief period of stillness, he realized that his anger had not begun in his kitchen. It had accumulated through thousands of moments when he said yes while wanting to say no. Thousands of times he swallowed what displeased him in order to preserve the image of someone who never causes trouble. The silence did not heal Nathan immediately, but it did something even more important. It showed him exactly where the wound began. That is also why stillness often makes people feel more uncomfortable than at ease. When there is no content left to consume, no conversation to hold on to, and no task that must be completed, the things the persona has concealed begin to surface, sometimes in forms that are messy and far less flattering than the image you have worked so hard to maintain. When you no longer need to prove that you are fine, which emotion within you speaks first? What do you truly want, and how many times have you changed your voice, your attitude, or your point of view, simply so others could continue seeing the version of you they already know? These questions are not meant to make you distrust every role you inhabit, but to help you recognize which roles are serving your life and which are quietly draining it. You can set aside a fixed period each day with no screens, no sound, no conversation, and no attempt to produce a result. Then write down 3 simple things: the emotion that is present, what you are avoiding, and what you already know but are still pretending not to know. Then ask yourself, if I did not need to please anyone today, what within me would speak differently? This stillness does not make you weaker. It restores your ability to distinguish the voice of your true nature from the voice of adaptation, while creating a small space between emotion and action, a space where you can choose rather than merely react. But when the mask begins to recede, suppressed desires and buried anger will start to rise, and that is when the second habit becomes necessary. Habit 2. Delay gratification to bring the shadow into light. Have you ever heard the story of Odysseus sailing through the waters of the Sirens? The first time I looked closely at this part of the tale, I realized that its deepest value did not lie in his resisting their song, but in his understanding himself well enough not to stake his life on a passing moment of willpower. Odysseus knew that the song would reach directly into his deepest desires, making him believe that one step closer would finally bring him what he lacked, when all that waited ahead were reefs and shipwrecks. So he ordered his sailors to bind him to the mast and refuse to untie him, no matter how desperately he later begged, raged, or commanded them. That image makes me think of the moments when you know an action will leave you worse off, yet as soon as the urge appears, everything you understand is pushed aside. In your own life, what song still persuades you that just this once will carry no consequences? The second habit is to deliberately delay gratification, because only when you resist immediately obeying an impulse do you have the chance to see what is hiding behind it. You may open social media not because there is anything you truly want to see, but because a few empty minutes make you uncomfortable. You may buy something not because you need it, but because you have just felt overlooked. You may eat more, drink more, or send a cutting message not because those actions give you what you truly need, but because they help you escape a feeling for a moment. Modern life has made this response almost automatic, like a motion-sensitive door that opens at the slightest movement, without pausing to ask who is approaching. Yet pleasure that arrives too quickly often conceals the most important information of all. What are you trying to escape? Jung called the realm that holds everything the ego refuses to acknowledge the shadow. It contains not only anger, envy, desire, or selfishness, but also qualities such as assertiveness, ambition, the need for rest, or the longing to be recognized, parts of yourself you may once have learned to condemn. When such a part is pushed out of consciousness, it does not disappear. It returns through impulsive behavior, compulsive fantasies, inexplicable bursts of anger, or choices that surprise even you. Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This does not mean indulging every darker impulse. It means seeing it clearly before it has the chance to take the wheel. Suppression and self-mastery are two entirely different things. Suppression says, "I do not have this desire." Self-mastery says, "I see it, but it does not have the right to command me." The distance between those two attitudes may be nothing more than 10 minutes without acting. When craving, anger, or the urge to retaliate arises, you do not need to judge it, nor do you need to obey it. Notice whether your face grows warm, your chest tightens, your stomach feels hollow, or your body becomes restless as though searching for an escape. Then ask yourself, what feeling is this desire promising to rescue me from? The answer may be very different from what you expect. Beneath mindless eating, there may be loneliness. Beneath anger, humiliation, and beneath the need for control, the fear of being left behind. You can practice through small, deliberate delays, not immediately buying what you want, not responding while angry, stepping away from social media for an evening, or eating slowly enough to notice when your body has had enough. The purpose is not to make yourself suffer, but to teach your nervous system that discomfort is not the same as danger, and that the presence of an emotion does not mean you must serve it. When you remain with an impulse long enough, without surrendering your authority to it, the shadow begins to stop behaving like a saboteur and becomes a source of insight into needs you have not yet understood. But once you stop feeding every desire the moment it appears, another question emerges. What in your daily life has been strengthening those desires from the beginning? Habit 3. Guard your mind to weaken emotional complexes. Jung once wrote, "Complexes behave like independent beings. A complex behaves like an autonomous entity because when the right place is touched, you no longer see the situation through the eyes of the present, but through the accumulated weight of every time you were abandoned, dismissed, compared, or made to feel inadequate. A small piece of criticism suddenly sounds like humiliation. A delayed message becomes a sign that someone is pulling away, and another person's success makes you feel as though your entire life has just been judged. Have you ever reacted intensely to something relatively small, only to wonder later, once you had calmed down, why it hurt so much? It is not necessarily because you are too sensitive. Often, the present has simply pressed against a door that has been stuck for a very long time. I was deeply struck when I revisited the story of the Snow Queen, not because of its magic, but because of the image of a shard from the broken mirror entering Kai's eye and making everything beautiful appear distorted and meaningless. The outer world had not changed, but the instrument through which he saw it had been poisoned, and from that moment on, everything passing through his gaze was twisted into another shape. A complex works in much the same way. It does not merely create a negative emotion, but quietly alters the meaning of what is happening before you have the chance to verify it. The other person may simply be busy, yet the wound of abandonment tells you that you do not matter. A disagreement may concern only one decision, yet the complex of being dismissed makes you hear it as a rejection of your entire being. Realizing that you have sometimes looked at the present through the eyes of an old wound can feel both painful and relieving, because you finally understand that not everything you once believed accurately reflected what was truly happening. If you have ever experienced a moment like this, leave the 3 words, "the past speaks," as a way of naming what has quietly entered the way you see others and yourself. What gives a complex increasing power is not only the memory of the past, but also what you repeat in your mind each day. The mind is not shaped by your thoughts alone. It absorbs images, news, comments, conversations, and even the ways other people narrate their lives. When you constantly consume content that makes you compare your appearance, wealth, or achievements, your mind gradually begins using those same measures to determine your worth. When you consume news designed primarily to provoke fear and anger, the world begins to appear as a place where something is always about to turn against you. Extreme self-help narratives can make you interpret every moment of vulnerability as failure, while overly romanticized portrayals of love can make real relationships seem dull and disappointing. There is one lesson that took me a long time to understand. Content does not merely take your time, it trains your mind in how to interpret the world. Water flowing repeatedly through the same channel deepens it, and what you consume each day does the same to familiar patterns of thought. If you continually tell yourself, "No one respects me," the complex will begin collecting every detail that supports that story while ignoring evidence that does not. After an hour of consuming familiar content, do you usually feel clearer? Or do you feel that your life has diminished slightly? That answer is more revealing than whether the content was entertaining. The third habit, then, is not to fill your mind with positive ideas, but to change its diet with greater awareness. For 1 week, notice which kinds of content leave you calmer and clearer, and which make you compare, resent, or feel compelled to react immediately. When emotion surges, separate the experience into 3 parts: what actually happened, what fear added to it, and what you still do not know. "No one respects me" can become, "I was interrupted twice in today's meeting." The second sentence does not deny the discomfort, but it restores the event to its proper scale, so the past no longer assigns meaning to the present automatically. Once its source of nourishment is reduced, the complex does not disappear at once, but it becomes less able to take over your entire mind. You begin to see a piece of feedback as feedback and distance as distance, rather than turning everything into evidence that an old wound is repeating itself. Yet recognizing the pattern is still not the same as changing it. The next step begins only when what you understand moves into action and becomes part of how you live through your smallest choices. Habit 4. Turn inner truth into action through individuation. I have met many people who understand themselves deeply, who can name their fears, recognize the origins of old reactions, and even explain with remarkable clarity why they remain stuck, yet whose outer lives hardly change. They know a relationship is making them smaller, yet they stay. They know their current work is eroding their self-respect, yet they continue to postpone leaving. They know they need to apologize, yet they still wait for the other person to soften first. They know they need to set a boundary, yet they agree one more time to avoid feeling guilty. In such moments, insight is like a beautifully folded map kept in a pocket, while the feet continue down the same familiar road. Do you already know what you need to do, yet keep waiting for the day when you feel less afraid, less confused, or certain enough to begin? If the answer is yes, it does not mean you are weak. It only means that the truth within you has not yet been answered through action. Jung called the process of gradually living in greater alignment with one's deepest nature individuation. He wrote, "Individuation means becoming an individual, becoming one's own self. This does not mean doing whatever you want, nor does it mean treating every emotion as truth. Individuation begins when you stop allowing family, the crowd, fear, and your idealized self-image to decide on your behalf, and start taking responsibility for what you have genuinely come to see. The difficulty is that truth rarely arrives as a pleasant inspiration. More often, it appears as something you have postponed for too long, a sentence that must be spoken even though it may disappoint someone, or a decision that requires you to surrender a familiar form of safety. The longer I live, the more I see that people rarely betray themselves through one great decision at the beginning. Fragmentation usually starts with very small compromises, so small that we convince ourselves they do not matter. You tell yourself that breaking one promise to yourself is harmless, that swallowing one necessary truth is not serious enough to address, that acting against what you know is right can be corrected tomorrow. But each time, the mind learns another lesson. Truth can be negotiated when it becomes inconvenient. One part of you knows what is right, another acts against it, and a third must construct enough explanations for you to continue believing that you are consistent. This is where psychological energy begins to leak, like a house filled with crossing electrical wires, not burning down at once, but always overheating from the effort of sustaining too many versions of the same person. I have always been deeply moved by Jean Valjean in Les Misérables, not because he hears a moral lesson and instantly transforms his life, but because the mercy he receives forces him to confront a question he can no longer escape. Who will he choose to become from this point forward? His transformation does not lie in the feeling of gratitude, but in the concrete choices he makes when he accepts danger to save an innocent man who has been condemned in his place. He could remain silent, preserve his new identity, and continue living in safety, but then the entire person he was trying to become would be built upon a lie. His story taught me that the inner life does not grow stronger because we think correctly, but because we are willing to endure a measure of loss rather than betray what has awakened within us. In your own life, what truth have you recognized for a long time, but still not answered with a specific action? The fourth habit, then, does not need to begin with a dramatic decision. Each day, choose one honest action small enough that you can no longer use perfection as an excuse to delay. It may be refusing a responsibility you truly cannot carry, admitting fault without hiding behind explanations, ending a conversation that is slipping into judgment, completing an obligation before turning to entertainment, or leaving a place that keeps pulling you back into an old pattern. Such an action may seem insignificant, but it is like returning one stone to its proper place in a bridge that has shifted. Each time you act in alignment, the structure within you becomes a little steadier. Do not assume that an authentic choice must bring immediate peace. Sometimes it will make you more anxious, more guilty, or more uncertain, because the old ego is losing the mechanisms that once helped it survive. The discomfort that follows a boundary does not necessarily mean you were wrong. It may simply mean you are no longer living through a familiar role. As your words and actions gradually begin to stand on the same side, trust in yourself will return, not through positive affirmations, but through lived evidence. Yet a life built only on discipline and duty can still become rigid, because human beings do not merely need to know what must be done. They also need a center deep enough to understand why they wish to live that way. Habit 5. Cultivate the sacred and realign the ego with the self. I once believed that if I understood myself, corrected myself, and controlled myself well enough, life would naturally become stable. But the more upheavals I have lived through, the more I have come to see that an ego preoccupied with managing itself can turn the soul into a construction site that never closes. Every failure becomes evidence that you are still not good enough. Every uncertainty becomes something that must be resolved immediately. And other people are gradually sorted into two narrow categories: those who make you feel valuable, and those who threaten the image you hold of yourself. Have you ever noticed that even when everything is going well, your mind continues searching for a new problem to control? That feeling does not always arise because life is too dangerous. Sometimes it appears because the ego has occupied the center for too long and has come to believe that it must keep the entire world from drifting beyond its plans. In Jung's language, the ego is only the center of consciousness, not the entirety of the person. Deeper than the ego is the self, the image of the psyche's wholeness, where opposing parts can coexist without one needing to destroy the other. Jung wrote, "The self is not only the center, but also the whole circumference which embraces both conscious and unconscious. This means that who you truly are is larger than your present success, larger than the failure that has just occurred, larger than the role you are carrying, and even larger than the pain you now believe will define you forever." When the ego forgets this, it becomes like a manager who mistakes himself for the owner of an entire city, feeling personally offended whenever a road refuses to follow his design. I think of Moses standing before the burning bush that was not consumed, not as a lesson in doctrine, but as a powerful psychological symbol. Before that moment, he was living an ordinary life, carrying the weight of failure and exile, when an extraordinary image compelled him to stop rather than pass by as he had on every other day. What moves me is not that he immediately understood what was happening, but that he accepted the possibility that something greater than his personal calculations was calling him away from his former life. This is also where a sense of the sacred begins. Not when you already possess every answer, but when you stop dismissing every mystery as useless simply because reason cannot yet explain it. How long has it been since you truly paused before something that made you feel small without making you feel diminished? This sense of the sacred does not require you to follow any particular system of belief. It may arise when you walk through nature without your phone and realize that the trees continue growing according to their own rhythm, untouched by whatever is troubling you. When you listen to an entire piece of music without doing anything else, and for the first time in days, your mind no longer demands that every moment produce something useful. Or when a poem, a dream, or an old image unexpectedly reaches a place deeper than your ordinary thoughts. Such moments do not solve your problems for you, but they place those problems within a wider landscape, like standing on a hill and seeing that the road which once terrified you because it seemed to have no way out is only one small stretch of the entire terrain. The fifth habit, then, is not to create another ritual merely to complete it, but to make room for experiences that do not directly serve your image, productivity, or personal gain. You might record the moments when you feel connected to something larger than yourself. Perform an act of kindness without letting anyone know. Slowly read a work that confronts you with questions of life, death, and meaning. Or ask yourself at the end of the day, did I live today around my fear, around my self-image, or around a value greater than either? This question is not meant to make you feel guilty, but to return the ego to its rightful place, necessary but not absolute. As the self gradually becomes your guiding center, smaller desires do not necessarily disappear, but they lose some of their power because the soul has encountered a value deeper than immediate gratification. Pain remains real, but it no longer occupies the entire sky. Discipline is no longer a way of punishing yourself, but a way of protecting what you know to be meaningful. Yet even a profound inner life can become distorted when you remain surrounded by relationships that continually awaken the worst parts of you, because human beings do not mature in a vacuum. Through others, we see ourselves, lose ourselves, and find our way back. Habit 6. Choose relationships that help reclaim your projections. It took me a long time to understand that a relationship does more than affect your emotions for a few hours. It quietly teaches you how to see yourself. Some people enter your life like a clear mirror, allowing you to recognize both your strengths and your blind spots without shame. Others are more like warped glass, reflecting every mistake as a defect, every difference as betrayal, and every legitimate need as selfishness. Stand before such a mirror long enough, and you do not merely see yourself as distorted, you begin to believe that distortion is the truth. After spending time with someone, do you usually feel clearer about who you are? Or do you need hours to wonder what you did wrong? The answer can sometimes reveal more than any promise, because the body and mind often recognize the quality of a relationship before reason is willing to admit it. Jung called the mechanism through which we see others through the unrecognized parts of ourselves projection. He once wrote, "Projections change the world into the replica of one's own unknown face." When projection occurs, you no longer encounter the other person as they truly are, but as an image shaped by your own fears, desires, and history. You may see someone as a savior because you do not yet trust your ability to support yourself. You may despise someone excessively because they express an assertiveness you were once taught to suppress. You may believe that others are constantly judging you, while the harshest voice is actually living within. Projection is like wearing tinted glasses and forgetting they are there. The world remains before you, but everything is colored by an old wound. I still remember vividly how I felt the first time I watched Good Will Hunting, because the film is not about a man who lacks intelligence, but about one who uses intelligence to keep anyone from reaching his pain. Will can identify another person's weaknesses within minutes, then use sarcasm and aggression to push them away before they have the chance to abandon him. He believes he is controlling the situation, but in truth, the past is controlling how he sees every new relationship. Sean does not try to become a hero, nor does he respond with coldness. He maintains his boundaries, refuses to be drawn into Will's defenses, does not rush to rescue him, and does not walk away when will becomes difficult. It made me understand that a healing relationship is not one in which another person always makes you feel comfortable, but one in which you feel safe enough to stop reenacting the past while still being held responsible for how you choose to live. Whom have you assigned the task of rescuing you, validating your worth, or proving that you do not deserve to be abandoned? Once someone is given that role, they will soon become either far too important or deeply resented because they are no longer an ordinary human being. They have become the place where you deposit all the strength you have not yet dared to reclaim. Withdrawing a projection does not mean denying another person's faults, nor does it mean that every wound exists only in your imagination. It simply means beginning to separate what truly belongs to them from what your past has added, so that you no longer hand authority over your life to an image created by the unconscious. The final habit, then, is to examine your circle of relationships through questions direct enough to prevent self-deception. Does this relationship make me more responsible, or merely more skilled at blaming others? Can I speak honestly without being punished through withdrawal, ridicule, or manipulation? Does this person help me see my blind spots, or only reinforce what I already want to believe? You can understand someone's circumstances without continuing to endure behavior that harms you. You can forgive without reopening an old door. You can care for someone without giving them the power to shape your most important decisions. Some relationships preserve what is best in them only when they are kept at a safe distance. A mature relationship does not require you to remain agreeable at all times, nor does it demand that the other person be like you. It creates a space where difference is not turned into manipulation, where intimacy does not require self-betrayal, and where both people are honest enough not to make love a refuge for self-deception. When you choose people like this, you do more than feel less alone. You reclaim the parts of yourself you once handed over to others, including your strength, responsibility, self-respect, and ability to remain grounded. If this journey has helped you see more clearly what has been quietly shaping your inner life, subscribe to the channel so we can continue exploring the psychological territories that everyone has felt but has not always known how to name. In the end, these 6 habits are not meant to turn you into a perfect person, because an authentic life has never been built by erasing every uncomfortable part of yourself. What changes is that you no longer allow those parts to make decisions in your place. You may still feel fear, anger, desire, hurt, or uncertainty, but you begin to recognize these states sooner, understand them more clearly, and stop treating every impulse as a command that must be obeyed. This is also what Jung meant when he placed before us the task of becoming who we truly are. Not becoming a more admirable version of yourself in order to earn recognition, but gradually living with greater inner unity so that what you know, what you believe, and what you do are no longer constantly at war with one another. As that distance begins to close, you no longer need to strain so hard to preserve an image, nor keep chasing things that offer relief only for a moment. Inner strength does not come from conquering yourself through force. It comes from the ability to remain with the truth long enough to endure the discomfort it brings and still choose what is aligned with the person you wish to become. At that point, what is broken is not the body, but the power of the habits that once kept you living at a distance from yourself.